The purpose of Wealth Talk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. WealthBuilders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Welcome to episode 179 of Wealth Talk. My name's Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for WealthBuilders, and I'm joined today by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Happy New Year, Kevin.
Oh, yes. Happy New Year to you too. Obviously, we're just after refreshed, recharged, and ready to go to give incredible value. And obviously, we stumbled a bit on the intro. So anyway, the content today is brilliant, even if the intro was a bit wobbly.
We're not quite sure how recharged we are because we're both a bit under the weather. So apologies if we're sounding not our usual sprightly selves.
No, you're quite right. So I'm feeling a little under the weather. My wife's not too well, but we had a fantastic festive period, and it was lovely to get people around a dining table, I think for the first time in 3 years, Chris. So what a joy it was. So and family is going to be a big theme running throughout 2023.
It absolutely will. And that leads us into today's guest, who is Abi Foster, who's the founder of Elent. And Abi's doing something which is really not that easy, Kevin, which is taking financial literacy into the schools and actually teaching it in a way of workshops, not just to the children, but also educating the parents and the teachers. So hats off to Abi, and we're going to hear all about that today.
Well, I would echo that. You can't really fault anything about Abi's enthusiasm and a willingness to really push herself, in a space where she's starting up as a business in an area which is notoriously difficult to break through because schools don't have any money. The teachers have all got pressures and pulls on their own time. So for her to go in and teach this, she's got to build an incredible amount of trust because schools can be very, very protective of the minds of the young ones. And I think she's doing just a brilliant job. And I applaud her because I looked at that, when we were looking at how to bring financial literacy into the home. I thought, well, what's the best way to tackle it? Is it to tackle it at the source, at the schools itself? I thought, no, this sounds too hard to me. So we're focused much more on enlightened parents, those who are actually taking some proactive steps to help themselves. But absolutely, I could not applaud anybody's efforts more than Abi. And I very much hope that we can collaborate with her during 23 as we really get into the meat of the WealthBuilders for Families program.
Absolutely. And I'll just mention for anyone who's listening who would like to be kept up to date on our developments with the WealthBuilders for Families program, which we're launching probably around just before summertime, when we've got that all together, I would say. And you can register your interest by heading to wealthbuilders.co.uk/families. So I think it's time for us to head on to our conversation today with Abi Foster. Abi, welcome to Wealth Talk. How are you?
Hi, Christian. Thank you so much for having me. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation today. It's so topical with all of the work that, we're now gearing up towards the WealthBuilders for Families program. And we were connected quite recently. And when I took a look at your website, when I really found out about what you were doing, I thought we have to have you on the podcast. And no better person to tell us what you do than yourself, Abi. So you're the founder of Elent. And what does Elent do?
So Elent is a financial education business. So personally, I deliver workshops, seminars, etc., into schools and educational businesses all over the UK, teaching the financial education we wish we'd had at school.
Yeah. And why did you get into this? What was your kind of purpose and mission behind it?
Oh, I think an anger for the lack of financial education that I didn't receive, and the fact that things haven't been changing as fast as I would like. So I thought, right, well, if it's not happening, I've got to set it up myself.
Because we hear a lot, don't we? People always say, oh, yes, definitely, we need to improve this. And there isn't any financial education in schools. But, people have been saying this for a long time. So, why is it so difficult to see these changes take place?
Yeah, it's so difficult because they put it at the teacher's door, but the teachers have already got a lack of funding, a lack of time. We expect these incredible teachers to just pick up another subject and start teaching it. And I always say that if they were never taught this. How are they meant to teach the next generation? It's such a changeable topic as well. So what do we teach the teachers to teach when taxes are constantly changing and financial products are constantly evolving? So I think there are real struggles, and that's why it's not been taught this far. But obviously, hopefully, Elent can change that.
Yeah. So how have you found it so far? And I know your business is still relatively young, Abi. When did you get started?
Yeah. Oh, I'm a baby in the startup or business world. October 21 was like the first idea. And then I went full time from Jan 22. And yeah, I've now started to see it ramp up, which has been wonderful. But yeah, a very, very, very early business for sure.
Yeah. And I guess just to, reinforce your credibility here, you're a trained accountant. So you've got the background there. Why didn't you continue with accountancy? What was the decision behind that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, I trained as a ICAW chartered accountant, qualified back in 2020. I used to work, so I started off in practice and then worked in like the glossy magazine industry for companies like Condé Nast and Hearst. And I loved it. And I probably could have stayed at Hearst forever. But I realized that I wasn't following my passion. Like a lot of people through lockdown, I kind of self-evaluated and realized what was it that I really cared about. And I always had this passion for eradicating the inequality gaps, like the gender pay gap. And I thought to myself, right, how can I eradicate this? A very, very big goal, but we've got to start somewhere big. And I realized that it's not just about teaching women of a certain age how to understand their own finances, but we've got to tackle this at the next generation before it becomes an issue. So yeah, that's where it all started. And I just decided to take the plunge, leave a very lovely job working in finance for Hearst, and move to starting something on my own.
Yeah, we had a great boss as well. We know that.
Yeah.
And, so obviously, we've been looking at how can we really make the biggest impact here in terms of helping the next generation understand more about money and really handle, get a grip on the massive debt that we see students getting into now. And it's difficult, right? We've already mentioned how difficult it is getting it into schools, but you are making some great inroads. So who are the people that you're actually targeting within the school and the education system? And we've talked about some of the challenges, but how are you now overcoming some of those in order to expand and being able to reach more and more children?
So in terms of who, I actually, as a business, teach from years 2 all the way through to university and beyond. I started off just teaching sixth formers. And then as the business has progressed, I have taken on more students. Obviously, the sort of subjects I'm teaching at university and sixth form level, very different to what you're teaching year 2s. But in terms of what they're like, how I've overcome going into schools, it's just about building trust. I think when I started the business, the biggest shock I had is I thought everyone would kind of say, yes, we need financial education. Let's bring this in. But actually, schools are being trusted with an incredible next generation that they need to look after and don't just put anybody in front of them. So it's taken a while to build that trust with schools and for them to bring me in and see that I am not selling anything or teaching them anything that's incorrect. I'm just teaching them proper financial education to help them on the next step of their life, I suppose.
Yeah. And you were telling me previously how, kind of schools are part of groups, aren't they? So I guess once you get some good feedback from one school, then others within that group, as you say, will have a bit more trust and a bit more confidence, and then it will start to grow from there.
Yes, yeah, that is something I'm also learning. So I'm not from an educational background. I have some wonderful teachers in my life that gave me a lot of insight at the beginning. But I realized very quickly that schools tend to be part of groups and they work together and they all talk to each other. And once a teacher tells someone else that you're good, it's great because I don't have to then work too hard to sell myself to them because I've already got the stamp of approval or the tick box from the teacher. So yeah, there's groups of girls' schools, for instance, in London. There's a large group of girls' schools I work with, and they all talk to each other, which is brilliant. Groups of schools in Oxford. It's nice when you're referred by another school because it really means that they loved you.
Yeah. And give us an idea. What are some of the things that you're teaching the children? What do they enjoy, and kind of what's the response been like from them?
Yeah. So if we go from the different age ranges, so year 2, I'm teaching the basics of inflation, which sounds a bit crazy, but they do understand price changes, and we look at why things have gone up and how it affects them. And they know the value of things that they buy, especially in year 2. We often talk about things like slime, which is fun. And then when you then go through the years, you can just add on extra little bits as we go. And by 6th form, we're very much talking about how to understand and read their first payslip, why pensions and looking at your retirement pot is important, and even debt. Consumer debt, especially with the likes of the rise of Klarna and buy now, pay later, targeting younger people, they need to be aware of what that consumer debt can have an impact on. So that's something that I would definitely advocate teaching in 6th forms for sure.
Yeah. And alongside teaching the students and the children, you also do teach the parents. And I believe one of those ways is with regards to student grants.
Yeah. So the thing with Elent is I didn't want it to just be about the students. I wanted it to be a very all-rounded situation. So I'm teaching the teachers and teaching the parents. And I do a seminar on student loans effectively and university costs. So for a lot of parents, talking to their 17-year-old about anything is quite tricky, and definitely talking about university and how much of an impact they as parents have on their kids' ability to take out a loan, etc., is really something worth talking about. So I do a seminar on them understanding how much their salary impacts what their daughter, son, person can take in a form of student loan, what the student loan looks like in a repayment, because there's a lot of stigma around student debt in the UK being this aggressive debt that's huge. But I actually like to think of it as more of a graduate tax. So bridging that information gap is really important to me, that it's not just the students, but also the parents having this conversation as well.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And as you mentioned, you're still relatively, in that startup mode, first couple of years or so. What have been some of the biggest realizations for you as a new business owner? What realities have you had?
It's a lot harder than I thought being a solo founder. That's probably the biggest thing I found. So I started Elent on my own, and I now have a lovely intern that works with me called Tua, and she's brilliant, and she makes me feel slightly less alone. But right at the beginning, it was just me, and it's quite lonely because even when you've got highs like, oh, school's booked on, this is amazing, there's no one really to celebrate with. So I think something I've learned over the last year especially is find some amazing cheerleaders that you can message in your circle and say, oh, this came through. And even though they might not necessarily have that much of a vested interest, they will celebrate with you. So it doesn't feel so lonely, because when things go wrong, which they tend to do in a startup, you also want them there to remind you of all the good things that have happened. So yeah, I would say definitely the hardness of being a solo founder.
Yeah. And, I guess monetization and sales is at the heart of any business, right? And so learning how to price and how to create packages. How does that work with the schools exactly, Abi? Because, perhaps think of schools not having much money to spend on these kind of things. So how have you navigated that?
Yeah. So each school, that's like the beauty of obviously working for myself, is I can make sure that every single school gets their own tailored package. So they get exactly what they need, no more, no less. And some schools are all about just the students. They just want the students to get these workshops. They don't want necessarily the added parent stuff or the teacher stuff. So we can make that happen. And some schools would like me to use my network to do these things called Your Future Days, where we go in with other careers. So I have like a doctor that we work with and other women that come in, and we talk about the future. And whilst I talk about the future of finance that might impact them, we have other people that come in and talk about other careers. And yeah, it's about giving the schools exactly what they need. And for their demographic as well. Schools range in size. It's something I never really realized. I go to some schools and I'm teaching just 10 in a classroom, and other schools where I'm plopped in a hall with, 400 people looking back at me. So yeah, it's all about tailoring it to the school for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess there's been a lot of changes from, say, 10 years ago, right? When someone was at school to where they are now when it comes to money and the world that we're in. Technology's moved on. Apps now are just used by everybody. You've got crypto. There's less dependency on cash. So how do you kind of navigate that, and how can you kind of get that into a curriculum that, is ever changing?
Yeah, great question. So it is ever changing, like you said. Like, I think I was talking about this with someone recently, that if I just pulled out crypto a year ago was this like new, it was really exciting. People thought it was going to be the next best thing. And we're just looking at it a year later and so much has changed. Obviously, it's wasn't regulated, and therefore when things have gone wrong, it's been very stressful, but it still doesn't stop that next generation asking me about it. I think every school I go into, someone in some way will ask me whether they should invest in crypto. And it's about navigating what you should be teaching versus what do you have to make clear is, a risky investment on the borderlines of gambling. So it's really important that I keep up to date, obviously, with my financial education. I enjoy it anyway, so it helps, but I make sure that I'm always up to date with what's going on. Putting that updates on my social media as well. A lot of the time when I go to schools, I leave and they follow me on Instagram or TikTok. And so I want to make sure that what I'm putting on my social media is also reflective of the changing world. But in terms of creating a curriculum, I'm giving it a go. I'm really working this year on creating something that would be like a standard financial curriculum for schools to use. But it is ever changing. And also, if we're going to create a curriculum, it needs to, like you said, be adaptable, but it needs to be tech responsive. So I can't willfully bring out a textbook and a set of exams and think that that's like real life, because it's just not anymore. We use tech, we are all so comfortable with it that maybe instead of a workbook, it is an online platform with just videos to make sure that the financial education is written for not only people that are comfortable with learning, but neurodiverse people that may not be as comfortable with reading as others.
Yeah. And I guess alongside all of those technologies is still making sure that there's a firm grounding with the principles behind, basic investing and money rules. Yeah.
Yeah. And also that we're not trying to turn anyone into accountants. We want to lean into this next generation's creativity and leave them with this ability that they only get the finance education that they need to facilitate and like work on their own lives. Not that I'm trying to turn them all into tax accountants or auditors or, I don't know, somewhere in between. That would be a very, very sad place.
Yeah. And what have been some of the highlights for you? Have you had any feedback from the children themselves or from the schools that you've been, particularly happy about?
Yeah. So I think the cutest feedback I've ever had was in junior schools, I don't tend to take feedback forms like I do in the senior schools, sixth forms and unis, because I just think it's a bit much for young people. But one young girl in, I think it was like a year 4 class I did, wrote me a Post-it note telling me like how like she loved the session and she had so much more to ask me. And she was very, very sweet. And it was really lovely to feel like, that the group in front of you actually care and they want to hear more. That was lovely. And then also, I suppose when I go to the sixth formers, they, like I said, they find me on social media and send me messages that they don't need to, but they do, and say like, oh yeah, I never really understood this. And now I do. Like, you make it relatable and thank you so much. And that is something I really try and do. I'm never their teacher. I go in, thankfully, with absolutely zero bias as to the young people in front of me. And that makes the session so much easier because I'm not judging any of them. I just want them to leave with all of them leave with the same education that I think they deserve.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Very rewarding. And you never know the ripple effects, right? You impact one child and, they can share that, and who knows where that will lead. And
Exactly.
You're definitely spreading the word as well. I know you've kicked off this year, 3rd of January, you were straight into it, speaking at an event. So is there more of that planned for 2023?
Yeah, I would love to do some more. So I was speaking at Wembley. It was mad. It was in the hospitality area, thankfully not to like 70,000 people. It was an educational conference, and I was on a panel discussion about reforming the education system. And then I actually did my own talk to the teachers, teaching them the finance I wish I'd had at school. And it was so fun and so rewarding. And I'd love to do more this year for sure, just to spread the awareness, spread the chat. And we're all aware, of finance being a bit of a hot topic right now. We've got the cost of living crisis, inflation is just every other word in the media. There's so much going on, and I just want to reduce the phobia around finance. And I think talking about it will do that.
Absolutely. So if people want to check out more of what you're doing, Abi, they can go to your website, and Elent is elent.com.
Yeah.
And what about the socials?
Yeah, so my socials are all the same. So they're ELENT_UK. And that's Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I love a bit of TikTok. It's just the video. It's just the relaxed vibe on TikTok is so fun. And also, if I'm going to schools, I need to be where these young people are. I say that it's not like I left school a million years ago, but TikTok definitely wasn't around when I left school. So I do find I enjoy that probably the most out of all of them.
Excellent. Well, I love the work that you're doing, Abi, and really hope that we can collaborate in some way with the forthcoming Families Programme, and certainly look forward to hearing more of what you're up to later in the year. So thanks for being a great guest on Wealth Talk today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Christian. This has been great.
Okay, so great work that Abi's doing there, Kevin. We can definitely dissect some of the lessons, the wealth lessons there. And before we do that, let's do our usual heading over to Trustpilot, because we've had a few reviews from the end of last year, actually, which I've not managed to read out, which I'll try and do so now by picking out one from DC. And DC says, the Wealth Builders team is a great group of people with a community alongside them that are genuinely committed to the financial independence of their members. There is no hard sell to tie you into something. It is quite the opposite in helping you build the analytical knowledge, skills, and network to make informed decisions.
Well, how about that? I'm always amazed by the words people choose. And that was one there, analytical knowledge. I like that. It's almost like... well, look, wealth building is a process. We know it's a science. It's a science of choosing your leverage, choosing your pillars, choosing your strategy within the pillars, and then focusing on one or two of those to get you to security, and then widening your skills and knowledge and connections to build still further assets. We know the process works, and I like the analytical side. But not everybody's analytical, Chris, are they? Some people just like to take part and be part of a community. They're less about getting into the detail, hence different wealth dynamics as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's many other elements that Abi talked about, which tie into our recurring revenue roadmap. We talk about leverage, and Abi said about, you have to really kind of build the trust with schools. And once you get the trust of one of the schools, because they operate in groups, then the teachers will share that with other teachers, and then that will make it easier to open up the doors and get the message across to more people. And leverage is a key aspect of any wealth building strategy.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you can't build wealth without leverage of all of its forms. And it actually reminds me of one of our other educational-based members, Chris Neal. If you remember Neil, I know you know him well, Neil Moggan, who subsequently is sacked the boss, which was the teaching profession. Not that he fell out of love with teaching, but he fell in love with trying to give his message to more schools than just a single school. And he's now in a position where he's racing towards financial independence, creating a business around providing education and mindfulness and sport in schools. So I think maybe we should connect Neil and Abi as well, because maybe they can help each other.
We absolutely should. And interesting that point, Kevin, because Abi also mentioned the challenges of being a kind of solopreneur. And we know that's true, right? It's difficult to start a business on your own because perhaps you're coming from an environment where you've been in a job, you've had a team around you, and you kind of think, oh, I know what I'm doing. I can do this myself. And then you jump into, being self-employed, being a business owner, and suddenly realize just how much there is to do. And when you're on your own and you haven't got someone to, bounce your ideas, to share your time, your resources, your thoughts, it can be tough.
Well, it can be tough. And of course, we know that, Chris, because we collaborate and now we've got a gang of three, aren't we, within WealthBuilders in terms of the leadership team, and we're expanding that. Myself, you, of course, as head of programs and partnerships, and then we're expanding that as well. And Paul, who's in charge of the kind of SaaS programs. And I couldn't do that. We couldn't get this message out without the leverage of you guys. So, it's what's interesting to me sometimes as I meet people when I'm presenting and I'm speaking in various places, is how sometimes it's not just how difficult it is to be an entrepreneur on your own, but sometimes even in your own family, there are challenges. I talked to somebody just recently this week, and they said, oh, my husband's just not interested in taking the risk. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. In a home where one person wants to create wealth and the other person thinks that the security they've got in the job is without risk. And it isn't. It's the illusion of risk, as we all know, because you can't own your job. You're not in control of your job. We've seen that in all sorts of scenarios. And of course, ultimately, unless you save your way, you can't build wealth, and you can't save yourself 30 years. I mean, you can't save for 30 years to support yourself 30 years in life. The maths doesn't work. So, it's almost like you want to shake people and say, yep, you're believing in the wrong things. You've got to take personal control. But I understand it. And I think this year, Chris, is going to be a bumpy one. I think it's going to be a difficult year for so many, not least because, well, look, if you see all the signs out there, we know what's happening in the world. So you can just turn the news on, or ideally don't. But we're seeing CEOs across the country saying, we're in it for the long haul here, and inflation is set for quite a while. We've got the International Monetary Fund saying a third of the world is going to be in recession. And it's so easy, isn't it, to listen to the bad news and to almost think like you've got to try and ride out the storm, batten down the hatches, hunker down, and wait for it all to blow over. It ain't blowing over. It's still going to be here for a very long time. So I think what we're saying in WealthBuilders is this is a year, as we've come out of the pandemic, as we see what's been happening in the economy, this is a year to take small steps. This is a year to take small steps of things you can control instead of worrying about all the bad news and the things you simply cannot control. And so we want to do our best in WealthBuilders this year. And I'll signpost a few things, Chris. I want WealthBuilders to throw out a lifeline to people in 2023. For those who want to help themselves, though, there'll be some people who won't. So if you want to help yourself, we are going to obsess this year about giving some free stuff and very low cost stuff to help people build their wealth. So we're going to be slashing pensions later on this week. I'll be getting stuck into the book on pensions chaos, why the pension system in the UK isn't working and what to do about it. We're going to help people take small steps to reclaim their pensions, to reduce the fees on their pensions, because the pension is the biggest source of retirement funding in the UK, which we know is broken other than for the profit in the industry itself. We'll be definitely reaching out and showing people ways they can take small steps to make sure they protect their family. We're also going to be inviting more and more people to give us case studies about some great things they can do to share lessons and show case studies and examples of how they're involving their kids. Because look, the kids aren't immune to this. Kids are going to see our reaction, aren't they? They're going to watch what we do, and many people will go into scarcity mode during 2023. And you don't want your kids seeing the worst of people. And I think that will happen in 2023. Relationships will stretch and break in some cases, I'm sure. So we want to be great money role models for our kids, and we'll be doing a lot about that. I know I've been saying it's coming for a while, Chris, but we've got an awful lot on our wealth building play, haven't we? But it's definitely going to be launched this year. No doubt about that. I've given that commitment. And Abi and Neil and other people who want to help and be part of that in some small way, let us know and join our free Facebook group, because we'll be doing, Chris, I committed to this as well. I'm going to be doing with you, I think, hopefully I'll drag you in, kicking and spluttering, to a monthly Facebook, or at least a live, where we'll be bringing more lessons and sharing more things for free and answering questions. Because when people get buffeted by the wind, they sway. And what that means, Chris, is they say, well, should I do this or should I do that? Should I remortgage my house? Should I take money out of my ISA? Should I cash in my premium bonds? Should I do this? What should I do? And they're moving and swaying in an ever-increasing wind. What we'll do is we'll be able to have those calls, get people live and answer those questions so that you know definitively, or at least you've got all the thoughts. You can be analytical and you can think about, well, what's the best course of action you can take? And we will have an army of experts giving donations of libraries of materials this year. And that's me and you, Chris, going to be pushing our partners to get free information and content so that we're known this year as a safety net provider, as someone throwing out a lifeline, but only for those who are reaching out and saying, yes, please, I'm willing to accept the help. And the humility that's needed to do that in difficult times is a skill in itself. So don't be on your own. Reach out to people, join a community, any community, go to networking events, surround yourself with people who are being proactive rather than surrounding yourself with news that's going to shrink you and make you go further and further and further into recession, depression, or whatever other language that isn't good for you.
So in order to be part of that, just, be a free member, join our community, and there's 2 easy ways to do that. We'll be doing the Facebook Lives, as Kevin just mentioned, each month starting from February. So to know the details of that, just head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/Facebook, or go straight into Facebook and search for Wealth Builders. Join our free community in there, or just become a free member by heading to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership. And that will get you on our weekly newsletter, and where, if you're not a Facebook user, we can send you the recordings so you don't miss out. So lots of good stuff to look forward to this year. And once again, thanks to Abi today for sharing all of her great insights as to how she's doing her best to make a dent on financial literacy in schools.
Yeah, hats off to Abi, as you say.
Okay, Kevin, we will catch up same time, same place next week.
Yes, probably a splutter-free zone with a bit of luck.
I very much hope so.
Okay. Until then, my friend, see ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the Wealth Builders membership site to help you create, build and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership.